Hey guys! Ken Levine announced 1999 mode for BioShock Infinite, which makes the game harder because that's how games were in 1999. What do you think about that?
I think it's called 1999 because of System Shock 2, right? Are we going to fact check that? I believe System Shock 2 came out in 1999.
I mean, is this like just reaction to BioShock?
Well, I think it's part of the reason why we even have this whole setup is because it's kind of emblematic of a movement within gaming regarding difficulty and what difficulty should be in a game.
I don't know. I feel like what they did with BioShock was a step in the right direction.
Which is, what did they do with BioShock?
Easier,
I mean, I know, obviously.
Easier gameplay to facilitate telling a narrative,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, games used to be challenging because they wanted you to put another quarter in the machine and keep.
Well, that's
playing.
going way back too.
It's going way, but I mean, that's
heaven.
the source of just the idea of dying in a game and restarting is, getting another quarter out of you, and we don't have a need for that anymore. So why not do something like BioShock or like the Prince of Persia, where you'd get picked up if you fell off a ledge and you just started from right where you were.
Well, we've got another game that came out in this past year that handles this in a similar way is Deus Ex Human Revolution. They had tell me a story, give me a challenge, give me Deus Ex as their difficulty settings. So that was sort of implying that the hardest difficulty setting was the way it was meant to be played. So do you feel like this is
that's pandering, though. That's pandering to the Deus Ex fans who, they're trying to please. And I'm okay with like giving the option to them as long as it doesn't detract from like the resources going into the rest of the game. Like if they have to pull somebody out to make this hard 1999 mode and that might affect the story, then like get rid of it. Like it's antiquated.
So it's sort of like console ports, right? Like you can sort of tell sometimes which system it's designed for and which one it has been sort of derived into.
The way we should be going with it, rather than adding a mode for people who want it hard, is to create an adaptive system. Sort of like, I know when Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, that was something that they tried to push, which is like, if you keep failing over and over, it'll get progressively easier until you reach a limit where you're doing fine. And then if you're doing fine, it gets progressively harder until it's challenging.
The Left 4 Dead director system also sort of adapts also.
Exactly.
And one of your favorite games of the past year, LA Noire, lets you just skip entirely sections that you fail a couple times.
Well, I mean, yeah, basically. I think that's the way it should be going.
So you've seen most of it by that point probably, but you just need to get past it.
Right.
Is their idea behind that, I guess.
What else was going to do that? There was a new game coming out that was going to have a similar mode. Mass Effect 3. And so if there's a game where that's very story-based, and like I'd say that BioShock is a very story-based game, then as long as if the narrative is motivating you to keep going, you don't need that extra challenge of, shooting up guys. If anything, those can get in the way if your main drive is, seeing what happens next.
Well, I'm sort of conflicted about that because one game where that is definitely the case for me would be the Uncharted series. Uncharted 3, as I played it, I kept imagining how great this game would be if they had just left out most of the shooting sequences and put more time into the other parts of that game. One thing I noticed, this is sort of a side point, but like in Uncharted 2, you can actually die while doing the climbing puzzles. There are things that are moving around that can knock you off and stuff. In Uncharted 3, it's a little more forgiving about how like you just push on with it. One game that is not necessarily like that, I think BioShock in that case, because a lot of that game is the atmospheric sense of sort of dread and being in this place that's really creepy the first time you step into Rapture. And if the shooting were really easy for someone, if you had accidentally set the difficulty too low or whatever, you'd just be sort of breezing through it, and that detracts from that feeling that they're trying to go for, I think, with everything being a threat to you.
I think that I mean, I guess it all boils down to the player, right? But I feel like personally when I played BioShock, one of the things that drove me were like the tapes. And so I remember at one point I did lower the difficulty because I didn't care about the shooting, and maybe it didn't create as deep a sense of dread or something was going to happen, but it allowed me to go and collect more of this backstory, which was motivating me to keep going forward and it made it a more enjoyable experience.
But don't you think that's just a shortcoming of the shooting in that game? Because that, if anything, that's the one criticism that I hear leveled against the original BioShock, is that everything's great, but the shooting is sort of just
it's not
there.
The great.
It's
not
just
the
there.
Greatest, yeah.
If the shooting were better, wouldn't you feel a little more compelled to do more of it?
I don't know. Maybe I sound jaded, but as somebody who's been playing shooters since I was a little kid, like, not necessarily. Like, I've done it. I know what it's like. That's not gameplay that I feel like I need. And I agree with you, like, with Uncharted. Like, remove more of the shooting. I've done that. I've done a third-person shooter. I want to know what the story is. But I guess ultimately, if they throw this option in for people who want it, that's only a good thing. So,
and I think that difficulty can be part of the experience if it's in service of an idea that's designed and not simply difficulty for difficulty's sake.